Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Samuel Thimothy, who is the Chief Growth Officer at OneIMS. Thanks for joining us, Samuel.
Hey, appreciate you having me.
So, Samuel, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass, but try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only, okay?
Sure.
All right, so the first one is, at what age do you want to retire?
I'd say 50.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
30 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Oh man, I can't think of one. I don't know. I'll pass.
Pass. Favorite color?
Blue.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Mornings.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
Now that I'm getting older, my doctor told me I need 8 hours, so I need 8 hours.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
I'm sure most people are probably talking about AI, artificial intelligence.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Chicago.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Neither.
So that's a pass then. The biggest mistake
Okay.
of your career.
I think not starting our business earlier.
How do you relax?
Exercise.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
I cut it down to 2 now.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Overthinking everything.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Read a lot more.
And the last one is your favorite Netflix show.
I don't watch a lot of TV shows.
Okay. So that's 3 passes. You actually technically passed all of them. So, all right. Okay, so let's go on to the bigger questions. The first one is, what is the growth formula framework that you've developed? And can you elaborate on that more?
Yeah, most certainly. So it's very simple. It's a very simple math equation. If anybody knows how to add it, they can learn it, right? Acquisition plus retention equals growth. But I think to simply put it, if you think about levers that you have to pull to grow a company, there's only 2 things you need to worry about. How do we acquire customers and how do you retain customers? I was recently listening to an interview by Mark Roberge, former CR of HubSpot. He was talking about in the early days of HubSpot. This is probably way back into like early 2000s. He was like the 7th hire or something at HubSpot. And he said in the early days of HubSpot, HubSpot's churn rate was 10% per month. So he said if someone start with HubSpot in January, by October, 99 to 100% of those customers never stayed around, right? So I think what companies don't understand is if you're really good at acquiring customers, but you do a poor job of retaining and expanding those accounts, you're not growing, right? But if you do a really good job of servicing customers, but you do a poor job of acquiring customers, then you're not growing either. So what we've come to see as a pattern in all the customers that we've tried to help over the years was that you have to have a very good systematic way to acquire customers in a consistent manner, in a predictable way. And then you also need a system in place to nurture and grow those accounts over time. And then they continue to reproduce themselves. So if you do that really well, you are growing as a company. So that's the equation that we try to teach and implement for our customers.
And so where is the correct balance here? Or is
Yeah,
there
exactly.
one?
Well, I think it really depends on the stage of the company, right? So if you're in a fast growth stage, you certainly need to be more on the acquisition front, really focused on growing. But you also need to be seeing what are some of the things that really keep the customers stick around, right? So if you're in an established market where a company is much more mature, you already have a large book of business, then you can shift your focus into the retention and growth of those accounts. I think there comes a point where your addressable market is shrinking, and you're probably one of the largest player in that space. Then you kind of own that space, right? So then it is going to be an equal balance of where do you invest. But yeah, I think you can't have one or the other. You have to have both.
Mm-hmm. So how do you approach even setting and achieving growth targets for the sales and marketing function in the first place?
So if you think about, even when we do this, when we, implement this growth formula framework in our companies, we take them through a very systematic process. And the first order of that process is building a growth blueprint. Even within that, we kind of have our what we call our 5D process: discover, challenge, define goal, develop strategy, and then deploy campaign and deliver results. So defining goals is a very important part of the overall overarching process of achieving your goals, right? So I think as a business, you need to have smart goals. It's very, as founders, we're all crazy and have big ambitious goals, and we're very optimistic about what the future can be like, right? So it's crazy to just say, oh yeah, we want to hit $10 million, $20 million, whatever those things are, and you can probably have a mathematical equation to show how you can achieve it with a number of opportunities and deals and whatnot, right? But then you have to make sure that those are smart goals. Are we going to be able to fund that growth with the resources that we have? Do we have the resources to support that? Those opportunities. So all of which need to be thought through before you can actually start executing it. But overall, I would say you need to have smart goals that you need to establish before you just jump and say, hey, yeah, let's go run with it and see how we do.
So how many goals are we looking at, say, for like an early stage startup?
I think the early stage startup companies are most likely are probably revenue numbers and the number of logos achieved, right? That's what their measure of success. But I also think they have to also think about what are like basically the product market fit and how well is our product being adapted by customers, right? I think in the early days of HubSpot, it kind of came up with the whole CHI score, which was customer happiness index. So every organization need to have some other KPI, not just revenue growth, but there's some other measure of success that should be measuring in terms of how is the company product being adapted, or how is our service actually empowering or benefiting the customers that we serve. So there has to be a couple of key metrics that you measure to make sure that you're hitting those targets.
hmm And so, what are your thoughts then on the impact of marketing automation in B2B? And how do you think businesses can leverage this wave of automation to increase their profits?
Yeah, so I think when we talked about the acquisition plus retention equals growth, we definitely, the number one thing we help implement in an organization is some sort of a technology foundation that tracks all the key performance indicators, right? Because at the end of the day, if you try to automate things before you actually know what you need to automate, you're going to run into a lot of issues, right? Because I know we've used Outgrow at many of our clients, implementing Outgrow as an engagement tool. Sometimes we have prospects that are coming to our website, spending a lot of time on whatever the prospect's website is, our client's website, sorry, right? And then if we don't have tools that can engage that visitor and then get them into some sort of a conversion, right? And that visitor just abandoned that site, right? Like if you look at it, average conversion rate on a good website is about 2%. So about 98% of the people that come to your website doesn't convert. So you have to have tools in place that actually can measure how your website visitors are behaving. And then you have to have tools that can convert those visitors into some sort of a form fills, right? And that's where tools like Outgrow might come into play. And then once they convert, the goal is how do you segment those people? So if you don't have a system in place to properly segment your audience into prospects that maybe they may have converted on some sort of an ebook or webinar or more of a sales ready conversion forms, and being able to segment them based on other metrics, other details, right? So using maybe some sort of a third party tool to enhance the data of all those people who are converted by company size, job functions, and title, and industry, location, whatever, all those revenue size, all of those things, and be able to segment them. And then based on the job function, you need to make sure that you are nurturing those people on a multi-channel, right, omni-channel model. So you have to have technology to automate some of those things. So marketing automation just happened to be one of them. But again, we won't recommend clients jump into automation before you really get a good picture of where they are. So you need some foundational technology and tools that can enable better visibility into who is on your website, how are they interacting with your website, and whether or not are we creating frictions or creating them opportunity to convert into some sort of a form fill, so we can actually at least to recognize who they are.
So, what are some of these third party data enhancement tools that you would recommend to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's Clearbit is probably one of them that we've used a lot with our customers, because a lot of times when we look at our clients, when we get them in as a customer, they have 15 fields that they ask in a 3-part forms, like where's your headquarters look at, how many employees you have, and what's your job function, all of these things that they ask, and we're like, you're trying to get somebody to book a software demo. You're asking way too many things up front, right? You're creating friction. How can you just ask bare minimum information so you have a form fill? And then why can't we leverage third-party data to enhance their who they are, right? Because if you have their corporate email address and domain address, that's more than sufficient to get a lot of the additional information that you need. And if you look at tools like HubSpot, it automatically appends a lot of information of that company size using some of the public data, right? The company size, the revenue, the headcount, the address, the main phone number, sometimes even appends the LinkedIn URL. And then if you need additional data, you can use ZoomInfo and you can enrich the data, or you can use Clearbit, or there are so many tools that are coming in that can tap into your marketing automation, your CRM tool to enhance. The goal is to increase conversions, right? Because if you think about, we talked about the acquisition side of the equation, right? On the acquisition from, when you think about it, right? For any business or service that you're in, right? You have, let's say you have 100 companies is the total addressable market. There's only about 1 to 3% of the addressable market is in an in-market buying stage, right? They're in the actively in a market in a buying stage. So about 97% of the people are not even in a buying cycle. So you have to be doing everything you can to that 1 to 3% that are actively seeking to find you. And then when they find you, don't make their lives harder, right? Make it easy for them to become a prospect, or become a lead. And then you got to figure out how do you nurture them and build that relationship. And don't be spamming them, but you have to provide value. And that's essentially where, again, not to keep plugging tools like Outgrow, you have to have tools that they can come back to. Like, are you creating resources on your site, whether it be ROI calculators or other sort of resources that are go-to tools that your prospective customers can use to maybe measure ROI, maybe do some other sort of calculations or metrics and whatnot. And then they will find you as a resource, and then they keep coming back, and then leverage your website and tools. And then you're also the one that is setting the buying criteria for that company to solve whatever the business challenges that they have, right? Ultimately, that leads to them becoming a customer over time. So I think there's a lot of things like that we recommend our customers to use to enhance the data or improve the overall user experience for your customers when they're on your site.
So, in all this, how do you yourself stay up to date with the latest digital marketing trends and incorporate them into your strategy or into the strategy of your customers?
That's the hardest part, man. This is an industry that's rapidly changing. I think, we've been at it for 17 years. I think things are changing much more rapidly in the last 17 months than what has happened in the last 17 years. So it's a constant research mode, right? Always Googling something and finding what's happening in the industry, and then also following some subject matter experts in the space, and doing everything you can to make sure that you're trying to experiment with the tools and technology. You always have to be constantly trying new things and not be afraid of it. So there's no one source of truth that I would say yeah, that's where I get all my information. It's a lot of tech blogs, and then also just these technology and platforms that we're actually trying to adapt. Seeing all those industry disruptors and reading those blogs, and then figuring out how do we apply some of those into our business or into our clients' businesses.
And how do you also ensure that your company's core product offerings align with the overall strategic decision of the organization?
That's also a constant battle as marketing and tech industry has continuously evolved and grow and become more complicated. Our product offering became super complicated as well, right? When we talk about helping a company, just the MarTech tools alone, I remember that MarTech list. If anybody who's listening to this show probably knows the MarTech chart. I think early days when that list came out, there was probably like 300 companies were on the MarTech chart. Now I think it's in the upwards of 5,000 or so. So it gets really complicated in terms of staying up to date and knowing what those tools and things are. But essentially, our goal is to constantly iterate and evolve and get better at it each day. And then picking one or two things that we know is going to stay here to stay, and then trying to apply some business principles and marketing principles and leveraging some of those tools and technology in our overarching efforts.
So, what are some of the tools do you think are here to stay, despite AI and whatnot entering the field?
I think foundational tools, right? Like there's always going to be some sort of a hype, but what I see is like, let's say, you're going to need a CRM, regardless. You have to have a centralized one source of truth for all things about your customers. Whether that's a marketing foundational tool or a sales foundational tool, you need to have that. The next thing would be like, how do you make your internal resources more productive? So what sort of tools can you provide that gives them quick insights on making decisions, right? Whether it be making them more efficient in their efforts, or giving them more insights on taking actions on whatever that is. So, like 15 years ago, You probably heard the concept big data. Everybody was talking about big data, big data. But the problem with the big data is there's so much data, but you don't know what to do with it, right? But the problem today is what we need help is not collecting data, but how do I make decisions based off of the data that I already have? I have thousands of people on my website every day. What am I doing with that information? What pages are they coming to? Where are they? How do they even found me in the first place? And where are they going? Where do they find the most friction? How come they're leaving my site? Why aren't they staying longer than 60 seconds or a minute and a half? Right? Like, and also if I'm getting conversions, which channels driven me the most conversions, and how do I make sure that I'm going to spend most of my energy there? So if I'm on a podcast like this, I can spend days on podcasts, but if it doesn't produce me ROI, well, why should I spend energy there? But if I know that my inbound leads have volume has gone up, my branded search has gone up, but I can't pinpoint to specific use cases or specific tactics, but I could know that, hey, I've been on 7 podcasts in the last 7 months, but all of those podcasts have given me a lot of brand exposure. People are starting to search my company name by name and arriving on my site and converting because they've heard something that I said or what I've explained made sense to them, but they converted. And then if you say, hey, all our conversion comes from direct traffic, so never spend any dollars on content writing, or never spend any dollars on Google Ads or whatever, right? So you can't make those decisions. So you have to have tools and technology that give you insights that would help you make much smarter decisions. So I think those are the kind of tools that I think we need to empower our marketing and sales team with. So those some foundational tools you're going to need, and then also tools that make them either more more empowered to make smarter decisions or make them more efficient in their job.
So, how do you measure the success of your growth efforts and use data to inform decision making?
At the end of the day, it's the number of booked revenue, right? That's the North Star that you're going for. But there's a lot of leading indicators that you also have to look at, right? The lag measure is of course going to be, hey, do we make sales? Do we generate revenue? And are we growing our current book of business? But regardless of that, there's other leading indicators that you need to study, right? So you have to make sure that, hey, is our traffic is trending in the right direction? Is our conversion metrics trending in the right direction? Is our converted leads booking at meetings at a certain percentage that we expect it to? Are those booked meetings converting into opportunities at a certain percentage? What percentage of those opportunities do we tend to close, and where do we get stuck, right? And do we lose those opportunities because of our product offering or our positioning or our the way that we communicate it, or is it because our personnel that are tending those opportunities, they're just not doing a great job? All of those are metrics, right? So we've implemented a tool called Avoma, which is a call intelligence or basically conversation intelligence platform. So the reason why we implemented that both on the sales side and on the marketing side, we wanted to know, like, we're having, since COVID started, right? We have a lot more video conferencing calls, and we have a lot of conversations happening. We want to know, well, how are these conversations going? What are the common topics that they bring up? What are the common tools that they mention? What are the common pain points that they brought up? And then are there any sort of commonalities that we see? And then where is most of our clients struggling? What are some of the common objections that they brought up? And then in the service side, we also want to hear common frustrations and pain that they bring up about our service offering, or what are some of the things that made them super excited about working with our team, and what are some of the happy moments that they've had with our account management team. So leveraging technology like that to really see it, and implementing best practices and adapting, and then making sure our entire organization is trying to get better 1% every day. So those are some of the things that we're implementing on our end to make sure we're winning.
So, do you have some stories about experiences working with loyal clients and how you maintain long term relationships with them?
Yeah, so we not only preach what we not only just preach, we do practice, right? Acquisition plus retention. So we spend a lot of energy making sure that our customers stick around. I think the stories that I have is, we commonly say we take companies from obscurity to market dominance. What we've seen, I can just share with you one example of a company. It's a Chicago-based chemical manufacturing company. Founder-led organization, probably was doing about $15 million in annual revenue, or maybe just somewhere around there. The senior leadership grown their company primarily through trade shows and traditional mediums, and have had a very strong book of business, but they were not known by anybody at all. So when we acquired them, we've established this this plan that we wanted to execute. We built a strategy for acquisition, strategy for growth, and they became a very well-known brand in the industry very rapidly, and a massive publicly traded company with multiple billions in revenue. somehow took note of it, because that company hasn't been, the billion-dollar company hasn't been able to accomplish what this organization was able to do digitally, building a strong brand and acquiring customers at a much rapid rate. So then they came and acquired. And that acquisition was just a journey that we saw, where a company that was in obscurity, no one even knew that they existed in the south side of Chicago, to a massive organization coming and acquiring them for very, very multiples that the owner was able to retire in Puerto Rico after that, right? So that would be just one example. So we have a lot of boring industry customers that we work with, and we also have a lot of fast-growing SaaS companies that we worked with, where they had to have a very because they had to create a lot of demand for their product, because they're trying to create awareness and demand while they're also trying to build a product and a book of business, right? So we have to work in some of those scenarios as well. So yeah, those would be some stories that I would say that come to mind.
And do you think this kind of accelerated development is also going to be happening faster and faster now that AI exists? Or in what ways have you
Uh,
seen AI being used?
we are starting to see AI disrupting a lot of different industries. I think if you asked my dad, 15 years ago, would he trust behind the steering wheel of the car to drive itself, he would say no. But he's happily sits next to me when the car is autonomously driving, and he doesn't question that it can happen today, because he sees that car can change lane, car can keep the distance, car can actually even brake much better than a human being can react a lot faster. So we've seen in industries that we thought could probably be AI wouldn't disrupt, right? Automotive industries, and maybe even 15, 20 years ago, airplanes were already doing autopilot, right? Just flying in the air with a very minimal input from the air, from the pilot. So we've seen in industries like that where you thought it would never happen, it happened. And then I think the white collar industries, where definitely it's going to interrupt a lot more. I think this is an opportunity for us to leverage technology and AI, right? Like to really disrupt some industries that hasn't changed in a long time, right? And then also leveraging this, like I said earlier, make us more efficient, make us more productive, and lead us to solutions much faster than human brains can alone do. So I do think there's a lot of changes to happen, and definitely marketing industry is going to be one of them for sure.
Okay, so speaking of car breaking down, how do you plan for contingencies and unforeseen events that may impact your company's, strategic direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you asked me before COVID, this was never even a thought, right? Because you're just like, hey, you're in the moment. You got great forecasts on what's happening based on prior year success and things like that. Then you have something like this where you're complete shutdown, like your entire industry just shut down. We've had customers that just literally had to lose everything that they had. We had one big company, which was it's basically a hybrid platform. So the platform that allowed them to do both hybrid event and virtual events. But the virtual event product came about after the fact, after COVID. So a disruption like that, where an industry was completely disrupted, the company was built on an entire industry of live events, and their entire book of business was wiped out because everybody was calling to cancel. So no one can prepare for some sort of a hardship like that. But if anything, we've learned having gone through COVID would be, you need to learn to diversify as much as you can, right? Because you cannot have all your eggs in one basket. So you cannot be just servicing one market. You have to have more than one streams of revenue. So diversification was one of the big things that we thought that we've done really well early on. So we had a book of business of manufacturing companies and boring industries that have been very stable organizations that had established book of customers and had revenue, strong cash flow. All of those things have helped us to have customers that are loyal to us. Then we also had the other extreme where SaaS companies and other industries where we had customers that had to just cancel our contracts and leave. And we were extremely lenient to our terms because we knew the predicament that they were in, and we also want to be fair to people, right? And we also saw our vendors being very fair to us, and where we had to term our contracts and things of that nature. So if anything I can say is diversify, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And if you're building products, and oftentimes seeing like, hey, can this product be useful for more than one application or more than one industries? Because we've seen industries where they were like super narrow focused on hospitality, and then the hospitality just shut down, then their business is literally of no use, and no one wanted to buy their product or service. So diversify, right? I think that's the best example. Financial industry professionals would tell you, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Warren Buffett would probably tell you that in the stock space. And I would say the same in business as well. Diversify as much as you can your risks.
So what are some of the industries you think have low barrier for entry it's easy to diversify into?
I think it all depends on the product or service that you offer. I think in the service industry, right, your cost of building something is very low, right? It's either your time and energy, and especially with the advent of ChatGPT and other AI tools, you have a lot more opportunities to experiment with product ideas. I just recently saw someone built and sold a resume parsing and prioritizing tool built on ChatGPT 3 and some simple codes and able to parse resumes at a much faster rate than any human being can, and then can actually tell the recruiter like, hey, here's the top 3 resumes based on LinkedIn profile links and based on their other social content and plus their resume. Here's the 3 candidates they should interview. Like those sort of simple products that you can easily build. I think there's a lot of disruption to happen, but I think you got to have your feet in something, right? You got to have your hands in something to know where the pain is. Like I'm in sales and marketing, so I see so many things. Recently I was on a LinkedIn chat thread. I don't know if you know Manny, who founded Outreach.io. We were using Outreach way back in the day, early days when Manny was just a founder and was actually doing demo. That's when we bought Outreach from the founder himself. And then I was just having conversation thread on LinkedIn. I said, hey, Outreach should definitely find out how to create. If I just upload a list of LinkedIn profiles and company name and the first names, Outreach should just be able to dissect all of those information and based on my product descriptions and my product and a couple of pain points, be able to custom create variations of emails and write very personalized email at scale and send the emails out. And he said, just stay tuned. And then he sent a recent update that Outreach announced, which they're going to have like an AI-driven basically email writing and sending feature in Outreach. So, those are the kind of stuff that I think is going to be coming about in the near future. So I think we cannot be afraid of disruption. We just have to adapt it.
Well, so swerving to a more of a hypothetical future question. This one is a personal question for you. What would you be doing in your life if not this right now?
I worked in the corporate world. Man, that was a boring job working. Probably, I just was an employee number. But I don't know if I will continue with that. But that was the lot in life. But I'm glad that I'm not doing that though, because I think I'm so much more passionate about helping other organizations grow and scale and seeing a lot more of those things. So I would be doing something entrepreneurial, but I don't know. It could have been in a corporate world, or it could be something on my own somewhere else.
Okay. Well, that was the last question. Thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. That was Samuel Thimothy, who's the Chief Growth Officer at OneIMS. Thanks for joining us, Samuel.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. If I can just do a little plug, I do have 2 shows that I run. One is called Coffee with Closers, where I interview entrepreneurs and business leaders. I enjoy those conversations because it gives me an opportunity to pick the brains of really smart people and then try to adapt some of their best winning strategies for myself and then also whoever listens. Then there's another show called Growth Marketers Podcast. If anyone wants to learn about growth formula framework or anything that we can do to help, it's our website is oneims.com. So ONEIMS.com.
All right, so check out OneIMS for more details, and we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.